everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about the deconstruction of cinematic heroes, how much of a current trend it is within movies and why does it continue to happen. So I'm sure people are well aware of the term deconstruction. If we take it not by its literal definition but more of the physical context, deconstruction is the selective dismantlement of building components, construction in reverse. If construction is to build something up, then of course deconstruction is to tear it down. Now in terms of cinematic heroes, many of those will have their own preference, but I think most would agree that there are certain characters that 100% fit the description of an inspirational hero. If we look at the likes of Superman, James Bond, Indiana Jones, Rocky Balboa, John Rambo, or Luke Skywalker, these are characters who very much captured the imagination of a whole generation of fans. Characters that we would look up to in order to save the world, uphold justice, or prevent crime. Whilst having their own individual challenges, these were heroes that we would look to as a force of good. Characters who would encourage self-belief, a confidence, a yearning to improve, evolve, progress, and overall succeed. Watching these characters would evoke a sense of positivity, a sense of achievement. We would watch these characters achieve a certain goal, go on a certain mission, and watching them complete that goal would generate a sense of euphoria and ultimately a sense of satisfaction. We would see these characters doing good things and it would make us want to do good things. But in terms of cinema, certainly over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen quite an alarming amount of deconstruction within these characters, taking the heroic qualities they stand for and breaking them down, stripping them away to the point where the character is unrecognisable. We take Superman, the ultimate cinematic superhero, inspirational in every single way. Throughout the DCEU or Snyderverse, he was broken down into somebody who was without purpose, directionless, instigating large-scale fights in populated areas. We had his father telling him to maybe drown the kids instead of saving him. We had his mother telling him that he didn't need to save anybody. And then we saw him even choose not to save his father when he had the powers to do so. In Disney's Star Wars, we saw Luke Skywalker, withdrawn and retreated on a remote island as the rebel forces, which included his sister Leia and his best friend Han Solo, fighting against the First Order. Not even willing to train Rey in the Force, losing faith in the Jedi, and not even turning up in person to fight Kylo Ren. And then, worst of all, we saw him even attempt to kill his nephew whilst he was in his sleep. The Daniel Craig James Bond saw the secret spy lose his edge, lose his nerve. We see him sitting on the beach alive, drinking Heineken, burdened by a tragic romance and an orphan backstory. We eventually see him blown to bits on an island, leaving the mother and her child alone. In the Creed movies, we saw Rocky Balboa alone, only having his past memories to cling on to, constantly being talked down to by Adonis, eventually getting sick and getting cancer, and being separated from his son. And most recently with Indiana Jones, all of the daring, swagger and physicality stripped away to seeing an old man alone, retired, divorced by his wife, his son having died at Vietnam, who only enlisted in order to spite him. So despite the intention of cashing in on the nostalgia for the majority of these characters, the modern interpretations for the most part have been met with a backlash from fans. But the question remains, why do we see such a deviation? Why deconstruct these characters to the point where they're unrecognisable from the iconic versions that we love? Well, I think a lot of it is down to the audience preference for what they perceive much more as flawed and vulnerable characters, and seeing happy heroes winning, saving the day, getting the girl presents far too much of an invulnerability. They find that type of story too predictable. They want much more of the shock or the sensationalism of the hero dying or the villain winning. We then look at far more deeper and somewhat concerning reasons tapping into the current cultural mindset, where people find themselves relating far more to villains. Despite the terrible acts that they commit, people still look for more empathy and sympathy within these overall personalities. Then there's the aspect of how certain parts of the audience want these characters to be reflective of themselves. For whatever reason, the social media community especially have a certain insecurity or inferiority complex, and they want to see these heroes have these same issues as well, rather than being inspired by the true heroic nature that they are in the first place. In wanting to see these characters fail, it almost as if they are seeking a validation for their own failures or indeed their own perceived failures. This perhaps opens a wider debate into the psyche of social media and how everything has to fall into agreement with the individual and their own platform. If people feel someone like Superman doesn't reflect or fall in line with their thinking or their ideology, they simply want to knock him down, preferring to see him less heroic. But all of these audience preferences lead to the biggest reason for the deconstruction, and that is the studios and their handling over these characters. For all of the talk of audience attitudes, the studios are in charge of these characters. They choose the writers and directors and greenlight the movies. It's their responsibility over how these characters are translated, and they should have a good enough understanding to know the difference between the inspirational heroes and the far more deconstructive ones. If the more flawed deconstructive characters are the current trend or the current preference, then there are plenty of characters such as the Punisher, Daredevil, Wolverine, Spawn, or the Watchmen that you can make multiple movies on. The mistake that is being made is taking these deconstructive qualities and instilling them in the more inspirational characters. That's overall the biggest issue. Studios look at the traction on social media, the various posts and tweets of a self-reflective or indeed a self-preferential nature. They look at all of the toxicity and the negative discourse and believe that's the tone that should be used for these inspirational characters. As so often is the case, they make the fatal mistake of believing that social media and attraction reflects actual reality. And when that interpretation is released and fails to resonate with the general audience, this is what sets the character back, potentially affecting their overall legacy. Now, whilst I understand there has to be certain adjustments to be made to make these characters fit within the modern day climate, there is also an understanding that you still have to adhere to certain characteristics and criteria that makes these characters so special in the first place. And by going too far in your overall deconstruction, in trying to make these characters more edgy, more cool, more flawed, more relatable, you end up losing what makes them so special in the first place. And then you sit back and wonder why your $200 million project hasn't given you the returns that you were hoping for. At the end of the day, the problem has to be realised that you have to gain an understanding of why these inspirational heroes have been so inspired. Why do people connect with them? Why do people look up to them? And you can't garner that through social analytics or data. What's overall required is taking a real hard look and research into these characters, understand their tone, their makeup, their symbolism, retain those special qualities, and at the same time make little modern adjustments so that they can fit in with the current audience. Once you do that, then you will overall have a successful interpretation of these characters so that they can continue to live on within modern day audiences, and therefore you wouldn't feel the desperation to deconstruct them so much. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on why do we see so much deconstruction of our inspirational and cultural heroes within today's pop culture and entertainment. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this is not an issue? Do you think that it is right that certain adjustments need to be made in order to keep these characters relevant? Or do you think these characters are indeed relevant and it's that more of a bigger issue surrounding the mindset and cultural attitudes rather than the characters themselves? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you have any other topics or issues or movies or television series that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on those topics within the future. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.